Well, hello there. This is Skip McCoy for RiverSoft University. This segment is on the patient-driven grouper model. We've made several changes to our software to accommodate this new payment scheme from CMS, and all those changes are outlined in our June newsletter. This video outlines all the changes in the newsletter, so you don't even have to read the newsletter. Okay, first off, next to the admission source field, there's a new Pdgm button. That indicates that that field is going to affect the calculation of the Pdgm, and it also allows you to go right to the note review screen to see the current calculation in place for this episode. That button has also been added to the risk page next to MU 1033, the ADL IADL page next to MU 1800 through MU 1860, the patient tracking page next to MU 110, and those components all go into making up the new HIP score. The new HIP score has 4 positions. The 5th position they're still thinking about, but position 1 is based on the patient source and episode timing. Position 2 is based on the primary diagnosis codes clinical group A through L. Position 3 is the functional level, and it's based on MU questions 1033 and MU 1800 through 1860, and it's either A, B, or C, standing for low, medium, or high. Position 4 is for the comorbidity of the case. It's based on all the secondary diagnosis codes on the 45, and the comorbidity is either no comorbidity, low comorbidity, or high comorbidity. Okay. On our new screen, the old clinical note review just had this portion here telling you how the HIP score was calculated. The new screen shows you how the new HIP score is calculated. And let's go through that for a second. Position 1 is based on the admission source and timing. So a community early is going to give you a HIP score of 1. Position 2 is based on the primary diagnosis code. So this primary diagnosis code is in the 3rd clinical group, or the C wound clinical group. So the HIPS position 2 is a C. The functional level of impairment is a little more complex because it's based on how each one of these questions is answered, and there are points awarded for how each one of these questions is answered. All these points are totaled up, and then that indicates what level of functional level impairment the patient has, and that's HIPS position 3. Position 4 is even a little more complicated. What they do is they take all of the secondary diagnosis codes, and we go look up a subgroup of what that diagnosis code belongs to. Then of all those subgroups, those are all taken as pairs, and we go look in a table to see if those pairs are in that table. If they are, it's a high level of comorbidity. If any one of these clinical groups is in another table, and I'll show you these tables, it's a low level of comorbidity. And if these subgroups are in neither of the 2 tables, it's no comorbidity. So these 4 positions are taken, and we look in a 432 element HIPS table, and that gives us a case mix weight and a new LUPA threshold. Instead of the LUPA threshold being 4 for all episodes, the LUPA threshold is now dictated by the HIP score. So in order to get the calculation, what we do is we take the standard payment of $1,753.68, multiply it by a rural factor if your patient is in a rural area, multiply that by a case mix weight, which comes from this HIPS table, and we get the labor portion of the episode. The labor portion is that times 0.761. We do the same calculation and multiply that by 0.239 to get the non-labor portion. These 2 components together are then used to create your 30-day payment. The labor portion is multiplied by your area's wage index, which is the cost of labor in your area relative to the rest of the country. And then that's added to the non-labor portion to give you the 30-day payment. Really, a very simple way of calculating a payment. Okay, now to help you with this new engine, one of the most important things is getting your episodes coded right, diagnosis coded correctly. It's very important to have the correct primary diagnosis, and it's almost as important to code all the secondary diagnosis codes correctly. This is the screen, the plan of care diagnosis code editor, and this screen has been changed to show 3 new columns. Each diagnosis code's clinical group will be shown, each diagnosis code's subgroup will be shown, and each diagnosis code's comorbidity will be shown. So what we're trying to do here is, if you have a primary diagnosis code that is not associated to a clinical group, that's a bad thing next year. So you want to get in the habit of making sure that your primary diagnosis code does indeed belong to a clinical group. What are the clinical groups? They're right here. There are 12 of them. Okay, let's talk about comorbidity for a second. All the diagnosis codes get a subgroup, and here are some of the subgroups here. This is table 30 from the Federal Register. If that diagnosis code's subgroup is found in table 30, the entire episode is rated with a low comorbidity. But we're not done yet. If any 2 diagnosis codes subgroups are found in this table, table 31, the high comorbidity adjustment interaction subgroups table, then the entire episode is labeled a high comorbidity episode. Okay, so you'll see in this case, this is just a screenshot of one possible diagnosis editor screen, but you'll see that this secondary diagnosis code had a Heart 10 subgroup. That Heart 10 subgroup fell into this table right there. So this episode is a comorbidity of 2. None of the pairs of these subgroups here were found in table 31, so the comorbidity of the episode is not high. However, in this one, here's diagnosis codes with subgroups of RESP5, Heart 10, Neuro 3, and Skin 4. Those are found in table 31, so we have a comorbidity of 3. So we're trying to give you that information as early on as possible. Our coding team is using this information now, getting used to this new engine, so that they're going to do the best job they can at providing diagnosis codes for our clients. Okay, to get ready for the financial impact to your agency, you might want to know, how would my current episodes be impacted with this new model? To see that, use the PPS episodes report in your system and this new button that has the 3 horizontal lines. By using that button, you're going to get a brand new screen which shows you all your episodes in a sortable list with the PPS HIP score and the Pdgm HIP score right next to it, along with columns for each one of the HIPS positions for the Pdgm HIP score, so that you can sort by that. We also have the PPS case mix weight and the Pdgm case mix weight side by side, so you can see those. Also, we have the PPS paid and then the Pdgm 30-day payment right next to that. Remember, you're comparing a 60-day payment to a 30-day payment. Remember that. That's crucial when comparing these 2 things. And also, we're showing the Pdgm LUPA 30-day payment and the Pdgm LUPA second 30-day payment, because the payment scheme is now a 30-day payment scheme, and the LUPA situation is completely different in Pdgm. Also, at the very bottom of the PPS episodes report, there are some new fields. We now provide an average Pdgm case mix weight across your patient population, an average Pdgm 30-day payment across your payment population, and then LUPA values, so you can compare your LUPA episodes side by side for the old PPS scheme and the new Pdgm scheme. In addition to that, we've added a calculator. So if you go into your reports area and look in the OASIS value-based area, there's a new Pdgm calculator. And what this does is, this is not related to any particular patient. This is for you to go in and play. So all you have to do is go in and fill out the green fields: admission source, episode timing, primary diagnosis code, MU 1033, MU 1800 through 1860. We'll take the points and put them in the proper places here, total that, and give you a position 3 hip score. Put in as many diagnosis codes as you want. As you put diagnosis codes in, we're going to show you the subgroup. If that diagnosis code belongs to a subgroup, we'll compute your hips position 4 for you. And then down here will be your calculation, where this is your hip score. This is the entry in the 432 element hips table. And then there's your calculation right here, along with the magic 30-day payment number. And that's it. We have a new feature based on this because CMS was good enough to categorize not just the primary diagnosis code, but also the secondary diagnosis codes into 2 important positions. We're now able to provide you with a feature that will give you guidance in choosing interventions based on outcomes. There'll be a video about that next month, and that will be in July's release. So, I hope you enjoy the new features. I hope you enjoy CMS's new payment calculation scheme. This is Skip McCoy for RiverSoft University, signing off.